with Carl, presented by Norfield. Today we're going to be working on the Model 1020 trim saw, and we're going to be rebuilding the saw home and return valves. Those valves are located under the saw motors at each end of the saw. Alright, we're going to rebuild the saw home and return valves, which are right here. So the first thing we've done is that we've raised the saw assembly up and placed a 2-inch block under the assembly to hold it up. Then we're going to remove the return valve actuating loop, the 3/16 Allen wrench. Then there are 3 bolts holding on the 2 valves. Use a 5/32 wrench to remove those 3 bolts. While we have the 2 valves off, it's a good idea to tighten up the 2 bolts that hold the valve mounting plate to the cylinder mounting plate. Those bolts are inaccessible otherwise. So we're going to rebuild the valves without taking any of the hoses off, so that there's no problems with getting the hoses back in the right place, because it's very important. So we're just going to remove the 4 bolts around the valve spool. These valves do not have any gaskets in them, only O-rings, and there is 1 spring under the spool. There's the spool. And there's the spring. There's the spool, and there's the spring. Alright, these are the 2 spools that we just removed from the saw valves. These parts, these O-rings and the springs, are left over from the kits that we used to rebuild the feed, start, and return valves. So first we will remove the O-rings from the spools. Now we only have 5 O-rings here left over from the other kit, so we'll have to open 1 more kit to complete this rebuild. These kits are designed to rebuild a series of valves, so there are some parts that we won't need. In this case, we're not going to need the gaskets, and we're not going to need the pins. So we retain the O-rings and the spring. So now we can install new O-rings on the spools. It is important to not use metal tools when installing the O-rings. The metal tools can damage the O-rings as you pry them into place, so use only your fingers when installing the new O-rings. Alright, so there's 2 spools with new O-rings and new springs. Again, we're going to retain these items and open 1 more kit to rebuild the 2 saw valves at the other end of the machine. So before installing, we're going to pre-lube the O-rings with a little bit of key lube grease. Okay, we're ready to reinstall the spools. Alright, so we're ready to reinstall the spools in the valves. So we have the spring in the spool. Insert it into the valve. Make sure it goes up and down. Put the keeper plate on it. We're going to have to hold it, the spring compressed while we start the bolt. So we'll install the spring into the spool, put the spool in the other valve. Keeper plate. Alright, so 2 valves are rebuilt. Now we can mount them back onto the valve mount plate. And we can reinstall the return valve actuator bar. There, we just remove the spacer block and we're done.